Yeah.
Hey,
Shout out. Peace. Welcome back. Super House
what's up?
against Tokyo-based hip-hop art and culture conversations. Keeping it busy out here now. It's the first time we recorded in a while. Thank you guys for clocking in, checking us out. Pay attention to the last albums we reviewed. Pay attention to the last things that we did. Pay attention to everything. Underground, independent, avant-garde, abstract, experimental. I don't know why I can't speak today, but this is not the first disfluency that I've shown in our recordings. But
Minus 0.1 points on the scorecard.
yeah, the dismount was weak. We will be competing in the Red Bull podcasting content creator championship at the Olympics in North Korea, 2028.
They're gonna fucking slaughter me on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the fucking ray gun of of the podcast Olympics.
Yeah.
They're like, and they're like, ooh.
He wrote a dissertation about it, though. We read it, and it's a bunch of Marxist nonsense. No, but shout out
Joe Rogan.
Right. Shout out to all of our comrades, all the Pan-African socialists, all the socialists, everybody left of capitalism. Shout out to y'all. We're here again to discuss the new Mavi album. I think this is like his third LP, perhaps. It's
Something
called
like
Shadowbox. Tremendous name. 14 songs, 33 minutes. It came out on the 9th, I believe, of August. So we've had a little while to listen to it. However, I only just now got to it this week, and it is Wednesday. I played it once, and then I played it 3 more times yesterday.
Yes.
And so this is not an album that I made a lot of notes on. I mostly just enjoyed it. So yeah, we'll discuss that in just a moment. Before we get into it, we'd like to tell you guys how we're familiar with Mavi, and maybe perhaps some thoughts on his career or whatever, or all those type of things. So when did you get into Mavi?
I don't remember specifically. We reviewed Laughing So Hard It Hurts, the second album,
2022,
a couple years ago now. I believe I had listened to Let the Sun Talk before then, which is an album I like quite a lot. It's probably my favorite of the 3 so far. But yeah,
Okay.
I've just kind of been casually into him. Maybe I got into him through Feet of Clay.
That's what I was thinking
Sweatshirt.
too. I think I might have got into it with the Earl album. Shout out to Caltrops Press. Go check out this. Shout out to all the people. Noname Book Club. All the people that are our patrons and we are their patrons. Call Out Culture, Caltrops Press, The Sonic Cloth, Rap Music Plug Podcast, Free Music Empire, Focus Hip Hop,
Noname Book Club.
Noname. Yeah. So shout out. But yeah, Let the Sun Talk 2019. I think I really enjoyed that album. I saw him as like a young emerging artist with a lot of talent and a really interesting pen, as well as like vocal inflection and delivery style. Laughing So Hard It Hurts. I think that I didn't necessarily walk away with that with like the brightest, like the most positive feelings. Of course, thought it was a tremendous, like a pretty good album. He didn't dip in terms of his writing ability or production, but it just didn't stick with me, if I recall correctly, as much as Let the Sun Talk or, even the EP that he had. So I want to say, like, similarly to Navy Blue. They had albums maybe that year or last year that as fans of them, I just kind of was like, okay, maybe this one's not hitting for me. But like Navy Blue this year and his work, this album, Shadowbox, I'm right back on board. I'm actually really enjoying this album a lot. And the more that I play it, the more nuance that I find in it. And I've been really, really enjoying it. What are your kind of first general thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, this particular flavor of like extremely personal but with like a positive tinge, kind of therapy speaky in places, hip hop often loses me. This is something I personally have not really ever loved.
Hence kind of like you not being the hugest Mike fan.
Exactly. Yeah. But at the same time, like, I think that the kind of pen game and the beat selection and the way that it all comes together in a very cohesive manner generally wins me over, and this album is absolutely no exception in that respect. I think that while this probably won't be, I've only listened to this album a couple of times. I have not spent a huge amount of time into it, less than I would like to while talking about it. Mm-hmm. But while I don't see this being my favorite Mavi project, I think, like, all in all, this is like a really good refinement of what he's been doing for pushing a decade now, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, it's getting towards that. But one of the things we usually don't do is not listen to an album a lot before we discuss it, and that's us dropping the ball a bit. But we're just trying to get back into the swing of things, and I always like to give albums multiple listens to try to unpackage them and be as fair as I can on my assessment with them. But the first listen to the album was like, okay, this is really good. Second and third listens, I was like, this album is really impressive to me. The sheer variety of like musicality in the production and the songcraft, and particularly the way that Mavi is rhyming differently on each track, and the flows that he's able to the flows and cadences he's able to step into and ride for multiple bars. I feel like his there's like an economy of words with his writing that is just getting better. His word placement is always so interesting and like rappy rap, but also like poetic in his framing and just like the emotion that comes through in his vocal inflections. To me, like there's like a very strong through line of in the album in terms of like his production choices and the way he's going. My first listen was like, oh, this is cool. And my second was like, wow, this is actually kind of amazing. Some of the flows that he settles into, like on I Did or Latch, it kind of reminds me, not to say that he and Mike are doing like the same thing, but the way that Mike will latch onto like a flow, like a multi-syllabic, like 16-bar
phrase,
run.
Yeah.
Mavi's doing something similar to that, but more with a flow than it is actual like assonance rhymes.
Yes.
And like you almost, because it's so melodic, you almost miss out on like the depth of like what he's saying and his thoughts. But man, his flows on this motherfucker are absolutely going the fuck off.
He's doing something that you see in, I feel like I see more in other genres outside of hip hop. Like the New Zealand Otter album that came out very recently, as a metal record, or stuff that like Trico from Japan are doing, who are like considered math rock, where it's like it's very sophisticated and technically elaborate music with, I don't want to say a pop sensibility because that sounds disparaging, but it's like there is an ease of access to this, and there's some, it's so sonically and audibly pleasing that I think even for someone who maybe isn't a bar whisperer, isn't necessarily looking or dissecting the specific tropes and skills that Mavi is applying to his record, you still get an extremely sonically pleasurable listen from the whole thing. The musicality in this album is great. Some really, really wonderful chords and arrangements on this. And the textures as well of each individual instrumentation and how his vocals, when he's singing or he's rapping, and kind of going down the middle. Sometimes he skirts the line of both, where he'll be in like a sort of rap flow, he'll sit in like a pocket, and there's like a melodic element, and it'll kind of graduate into singing, as just straight up singing, or vice versa. And I think that's something that Mavi does really, really well on this record.
Yeah. The thing that stood out to me most, like on the first listen, was the production. I gotta say, like my least favorite track is probably the opener. I understand it sets the stage, and I don't really have any legit criticisms over the arrangement of the album, but that first track, it's just kind of like drumless and it's kind of like poetic, and it's the musicality on it is really good, but that's the one song that I kind of just don't really care for enough. But as I began to listen, it's like the production on this album is just, it's wide, it's varied, it's like one of the things that's present is like this higher level of like musicality happening with a usage of what sounds like live instrumentation, or maybe just like some really good MIDI work with some some live instrument plug-in type of things. But he also has a few of the tracks that have that kind of previous album more wonky, weird is not a great term, but kind of the kind of offbeat, kind of strange arrangement that you would get from cats that were doing things in that era, like a Demagier or like Mavi's first few albums, or even weird type of mic stuff. Whereas this album seems a little bit more towards not a pop sensibility, but the song structures kind of function a little bit more to me in that towards that degree. And there's just some really incredibly beautiful moments on this album with the production, and like there's no features on this album in terms of MCs, right? And Mavi somehow manages, like, it's a really breezy 33-minute listen, but it moves so well and it's so varied that when I got to the end of the album and it looped back on, I was like, wait, like, did the album finish? Like, it was just,
Yes.
it's incredible. Like, listen to these guitar chords on Open Waters, right? And then the singing, the arrangement,
harmonies, yeah.
it's one of the things that kept on ringing in my head as I was listening to this album was a bit of maturity. Like, I'm a 41-year-old dude, so when I listen to like a 20-something cat and the things that they've got to say, a lot of times, like, I'm like, oh, this is young man shit, and this is like broken heart shit, this is finding myself shit. But one of the things, along with the musicality growing and maturing, Mavi's writing has also matured, but also I feel like his kind of understanding of like who he is and where he wants to go and what he wants to do and what his art means to him is something that seems a little bit like more maturely pronounced on this album. And I really think that the production coupled with that and his music is a perfect expression of like who he is now. This is I have only listened to this album maybe like 5 times max, but this might be Mavi's best work. And I don't mean that to say like the other work is weaker or whatever, but this seems like fully formed, completely intentional. The musicality and the writing are at the highest levels that I've heard from his kind of production and his pen and his flows and his like interpersonal shit. Like, this is just fucking really good.
It kind of reminded me of the McKinley-Dixon that came out last year in that respect, in that like it is supremely well executed in everything it sets out to do, and just the kind of musicality and the beauty of the instrumentation and the way it all comes together is absolutely top tier. But at the same time, it has a bit more of a griminess, a bit more of a dustiness. It's a bit
also
more
has
underground, like
a bit more of like a DAW production style than like a live band. Like
yes.
The McKinley really felt like, oh, this is like live band recorded with like electronic drums. Like, this shit feels like somebody sequenced,
Yes.
like there is that difference. But I also like, I think that's a really good, like poignant thought. Like, yeah, that it is a lot like that in terms of, the blackness and that black radical tradition. But man, Mavi, like, his flows, like, he's back when I first heard him, I was like, wow, he's like one of the illest writers, and just the way that his feeling comes through in his voice in a really interesting way. Like, he used to have like this kind of like exasperated to get his voice out. He almost felt breathy. On this, you see less of that, but you see like this really perfect syllable counting that he's lost a little bit of that rawness, but makes up for it in terms of just like locking into flows. Like, this song I did, like,
I'm fighting sleep, I'm guided by the roar of my engine. So I'm dialing ill advised, being alone in my condition. You decline and fight trauma of your own, so I get it.
You see that kind of exasperated, like trying to get it out. Like,
and it's something
so
that's
good.
When we talk about the movement between singing and rapping, is that he will begin the flow singing, and then he'll conclude the rhyme, as his breath runs out and he's putting like, more of his chest into it. It's more of a rap type thing, the note comes out flat, like he sings a bum note, but it works because it just kind of communicates the emotional state of the record at that exact point.
And also whereas singing, if it was singing, like, the bars are complex and the word placement is so unique, and it circumvents your, like, if you're a rapper that tries to anticipate a bar or what it might rhyme with, he often like subverts what you think is going to happen. Yes. His word placement is crazy, and it never comes across as singing to me, but the melodic structure of it is a little bit singing, but the bars are so complex that it's like, who sings like that?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, Latch is another example of this really kind of like catchy kind of sing-song flow.
Production's great on this one.
Oh man, like, the more I listen to this album, like, man, maybe I was like, what was I doing the first time I listened to it? Like, I missed a lot of, I think perhaps it's because it's like, it's so musical and good to just feel like you kind of just like, it's not the most musical thing I've heard. It's not the most rapidy rap thing I heard, but that combination, bro, like,
I see that borderline alluring throwing corpses out my sickness. I metamorphosized and made a course about my trenches. I let the Lord decide if I would go or not, and he sent me. I showed my mortal side and she was mortified, I wait still. I close the door sometimes, still go to war behind my sister.
And man, like I should have wrote down more lyrics. And shout out to people who put lyrics on Genius, but there's so many bars of like solidarity and just like, even when I'm scoring, I'm assisting. Like he really has. There's nothing on this album. Like, you know me, I get a little bit like, man, it's a little bit toxic in this motherfucker and shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily like. While I understand like people live that, and I've also done my dirt and held gun, you know, and do things that happens to a lot of cats in our class. In the United States, like I can't necessarily rock with a Boldy James album all the time just because of content. There's nothing on this album that I'm like, that's toxic. In fact, this album is uplifting to me without being overly like
Preachy
sentimental or preachy.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, this is just like, bro, I rock with you. You know what I mean? This is a conversation I could have with a stranger, and I'd be like, bro, like we just met, like you know what I mean? Like calm it down. What? Like, nah, it's just like, yeah, bro, I'll go to war for my sister too. You know what I mean? Like, and like, I was.
Remember when I was pure, but ain't have nowhere I could rest.
Testimony is, bro. I almost, if there's ever been like, there's a few albums that I've listened to that we've done that I'd be like, yo, it'd be cool to do like this album a month later, so when it grows on you a little bit more. Like I could probably do that with this album and pick out the bars that are just incredible. Now we don't necessarily do that because we're always trying to give shine to albums that are just too much to go back for another week, you know what I mean, like another month. But man, this album it deserves deeper listens. It deserves thoughts about what he's trying to express, and I think that there's a depth here, music like production wise and lyrics, that is surprising. This is a sleeper fucking hit for me. The more I hear it, I'm just like, god damn, bro, Mavi's back. Like, because the last one, I was like, I like 3 songs on the last joint a lot.
I like the last one a lot. I just, I maybe across the whole record, I didn't quite catch the level of ambition or kind of that fire that you got from the first one. This record, I think, does a really good job of somehow being both like experimental while also being like a refinement and a very accessible kind of listen. Like I wish it's on me, like I probably should have listened to this album another 5 times before we got into the studio, but obviously we're just trying to get back into the habit of doing these regularly.
We haven't recorded in like a month, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Yeah. We'll be back into it, but this was a 30-minute listen. We thought it was pretty breezy, but man, like
my siblings in my heart home. I'm living missing calls though. I slid it so hard cold. She lift me by a long rope and pick it like a tornadoes. I'm sicking, but it's all load.
You see what I'm saying? Where it's like
kind of an assonance flow, but it's not as exaggerated as it is with a mic.
Yeah. He has like he's like Mike with a swing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like and I don't mean to say like, oh, he's doing Mike or that. I don't want to diminish what Mavi's doing, but I'm just saying like from a perspective of people who listen to us, and one of the reasons that I like Mike is this album has some of those like some of those facets in terms of the pen and just how he locks into flows. It's an unusual talent, and it's not one that a lot of MCs could pull off, but Mavi fucking cooking on this shit.
Pretend I'm friends with God through all my wins, he equalize on. Swimming in the eyes, nobody fit in my sign.
Yeah, I gotta send this to a couple people. like when I first heard it, but yeah, I gotta send this to MJ. I gotta send this to AV. I gotta send this to my nephew Rock. I gotta send this to a lot of people because it's this grows. This might grow on people because it grew on me a lot. I was talking about it on the Rap Music Plug podcast just like 2 days ago, right? And when I was like, yo, y'all locked into the Mavi, and I was like, yeah, maybe I don't know how I feel about it that much, but I listened to the second time, a third time, a fourth time, and I was just like, yo, every time that I got back to it, I was like, wait a second, this is actually better than you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think it was growing on a lot of people like that too. I know Shamar was like, the writing on this is incredible, and I agree.
There's a demon that grew up with that nigga, bro.
Yeah, but anyways, what are your... This is a short one, but
favorite tracks?
Yeah.
I'll probably go with Open Waters, I'm So Tired, and Grindstone.
I did Latch, Testimony, But to be honest, like that probably will change after my next listen because
yeah.
he cooking. Shout out to Mavi. Shout out to all of our patrons, all the people that we rock with. You guys are on the people's on the screen right now and all that type of stuff. Secret House Against Tokyo stuff.
I feel like I've heard this beat before or this sample on something, and I can't place it.
Okay.
But I think I've heard this sample, this shining. Like maybe I'm tripping.
Nah, you might pull it out later because that's what happened to me on that black chai. Remember, I was like, "What is this? What is this? What is this?" And it fucked with me for like 3 days, and I was like, "Okay, that's easy."
I thought I made it out to sea, but I was dreaming. Ursa Major was the ladle, come and scoop me.
See, you know how a lot of cats like settled into like sing song, like really singing.
Yeah.
When he's doing that, it feels more just like a poetic meter to me more than it feels like singing, just because of his like words.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the only MC I can think of off the top of my head where I'm like, he does something similar is Odyssey, who will also just do singing, but he will also do these like deeply melodic flows where he is singing, but he is, these are raps in the true sense of the word as well.
Bet. Okay, yeah. We'll be back. Ka
soon
is coming up. Maybe Navy Blue is coming up. Save
Big
the
Flowers,
Bees,
Save
Big
the Bees.
Flowers, Messiah Music, Black Chai is coming up. Maybe Sasko is coming up. Pay attention.
At least I think it's I can't remember shit. Oh, I drink till I can't feel it. At least I think it's I can't remember shit. Oh, I drink till I can't feel it.